Hello, I'd just like to share with you how my uncle memorised the 50 states, United States of America. By a simple story that he strung together, he would tell me that not even the Americans sometimes can remember all their 50 states. This is the story. First there was a fellow, his name was Washington, and he was an axeman, and he used to go and look for wood, a special type of wood called Oregon. So that was Washington. And then this particular fellow, possibly before he was president, if he was George Washington, before he was president, he lived in the state, for the story, of California. So that's the state of California. Now he had a wife, and his wife's name was Ida. That's how he got the name Idaho. Hopefully she wasn't a hoe. And Ida also had a sister called Ada. And Washington never looked at Ada because otherwise he would lose the dear love of his Ida. So that's why the next state is never look at Ada, Nevada. So that's the first 5 states. At this stage my uncle would put his hand in his chin and go, why? Because you wouldn't know what the next one to do. So you would remind him to say M for Montana, and Y for Wyoming. This would get him past that block. And that's why he would remember the next 2 states. Now this Washington lived in this little hut in outback California, and he would look through the window. And the window consisted of 4 states: Utah, Colorado, Arizona and New Mexico. They were the 4 states. And that's how I remembered the next 4 states. Now Washington and his lovely wife Ida had a daughter called Dakota. This is how we would remember the next set of states, because this would be North Dakota and this would be South Dakota. And Dakota was brought up religiously because Nebraska is a Bible belt in the United States, and Lincoln, Nebraska was a great capital of the Bible belt. So that's how I remembered Nebraska, this little Dakota, brought up quite religiously. And of course Dakota had to go in a cot. So that's how we would remember the next 3 states, because they made up the acronym of the word cot. There's Texas down the bottom there. I can draw it right. So that's Texas, that's Oklahoma, and that's Kansas. K-O-T. Now, young Dakota fed on a syrupy substance called, not unlike Nestle, which is called Mimal. M-I-M-A-L was spelt. And this is how he would remember the next 5 states. It represented the first letter of each of that syrupy substance he fed to the young Dakota. So this is Minnesota, this is Iowa, this is Missouri, this is Arkansas and Louisiana. So there you have a good chunk of the states already remembered. Now my uncle, he used to like this fellow called Id. And at the bottom of a bicky tin one time, his father, he stole all the bickies and he said, "What, no bickies?" And he left that little picture there. And it reminded him of the Great Lakes of Michigan, with Chicago being at the tip. So this is Id, and that's perhaps his hands at the top, looking over this great chest of drawers, and this is Chicago with a dewdrop on his nose waiting to drop. And so this one is Wisconsin, and this one is Michigan, and then this id character is singing I-I-O, because I stands for Illinois, I stands for here Indiana, and then O stands for Ohio, I-I-O. He's singing as he's looking over this chest of drawers. So they're the first three drawers. In the next two drawers, he's a bit of an untidy fellow, he would keep his chicken. So that's Kentucky. Very greasy drawer, that one. And then he would keep also his music here, the great Tennessee Waltz. And in the last three drawers, this character looking over the chest of drawers would be, he would keep his magazines. And there was Mississippi, M-A-G, Mississippi, Alabama and Georgia. That's how I remembered those three states down the bottom. So you can see this id, and he's looking over these chest of drawers with the first three, I-I-O, and then Kentucky, Tennessee, to pull out the drawers, and the last three drawers. And now this fellow was a very greedy fellow, so he would munch down plenty of ice cream. So remember the next 5 states by ice cream cones. They all look a bit like cones, to be quite honest. And that was how we remembered the next 5 states. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that was Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia and West Virginia. So we remember those 5 by this series of 5 cones. Now at the top was a big granddaddy of them all. He said there was a big granddaddy of them all because it was a big long name, and it was Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania. And this Pennsylvania, that was his name, he was the father of Washington, the grandfather of Dakota, and he was sitting on this chest of drawers with his feet up and was reading the news. Being a clever fellow, he was reading the 2 news, New York and New Jersey. They were the 2 news. And he would be, him being an MD, being a doctor, that's how I remember the states, Maryland, which is here, Maryland, and Delaware. And of course he had to go to university, so he would remember the university by Harvard University, which is in Boston, Massachusetts. So remember Massachusetts there, and of course Connecticut is underneath it. It connects the states to the New England states perhaps. So that's Connecticut and that's Massachusetts. And then of course this fellow probably wanted to eat some chicken sometime, so there's a little Rhode Island here, which is a Rhode Island red chicken. The last 3 states he would remember by just as a string of 3, Vermont, New Hampshire and Maine. There was no set rules for that, but I'm sure he wouldn't have trouble remembering those 3 states, Vermont, New Hampshire and Maine. There's only 2 more states, and that's Alaska, and then up on the north, and also Hawaii. So that makes 50 states. 50 states of America, and that's precisely how he remembered the entire 50 states. I'm Bradley Marshall's dad, and I just thought I'd share that with you, his technique and that little story, beautiful story that he told to remember the entire 50 states when I was about 12 or 13. Thank you.